I've always felt a little out of place, like I was born into a world that speaks a language I can't quite grasp. It's not that I think I'm better, far from it. It's just that my mind moves differently, lingers where others rush past, and aches for answers to questions no one else seems to ask. I remember being a kid, sitting in a noisy classroom, watching my classmates laugh over things that felt trivial to me. They'd trade jokes, chase trends, and move through life with an ease I envied. Meanwhile, I was stuck wondering, why do people hide who they are? Why does everyone follow the same rules without questioning them? Why do I feel like I'm watching life through a glass wall, never fully part of it? That was my first taste of the quiet ache. I now know so well the loneliness of a mind that sees too much. Maybe you've felt it too. You speak, and the room goes still, not because you're wrong, but because your words hit too close to something unspoken. You notice the cracks in people's smiles, the contradictions in their words, the way they cling to routines to avoid facing the void. And slowly, people start to drift. They laugh at things that bore you, obsess over dramas that feel hollow, while you're wrestling with questions about life, death, and what it all means. You try to blend in. You smile, nod, play the part, but deep down, you feel like a stranger in your own skin. And then the doubt creeps in. Is there something wrong with me? But what if it's not me? What if it's the world that isn't built for people like us? The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said that to be true to yourself is to walk a path most avoid a path of solitude, not because you choose it, but because it chooses you. He believed that those who think deeply, who dare to live authentically, are destined to feel alone. But that loneliness isn't a flaw, it's a sign of a mind that refuses to settle for illusions. This is my story of carrying that weight, of learning to embrace it, and of finding freedom in the quiet. If you've ever felt like an outsider, this is for you. A child who saw too much. I was 8 when I first felt the disconnect. My friends would race around the playground, lost in games, while I'd sit under a tree, wondering why we were all here. I'd ask my teacher questions she couldn't answer. Why do we follow rules that don't make sense? Why do grown-ups pretend to be happy when they're not? She'd smile, pat my head, and say, "You think too much." But to me, it wasn't too much, it was just enough to feel alive. As I grew older, the gap widened. In high school, I'd sit through conversations about gossip or trends, nodding along, but my mind was elsewhere. I'd wonder why people cared so much about fitting in, why they laughed at jokes that hid pain, why they avoided the big questions that kept me up at night. I tried to join in, to be normal, but it felt like lying. My honesty made people uneasy. I'd point out a contradiction in a group chat, and the replies would stop. I'd ask, "Why?" in class, and eyes would roll. I learned to stay quiet, to keep my thoughts locked away, but the silence was heavy. It wasn't arrogance. I was just exhausted from trying to explain a world I saw so clearly. The crowd's unspoken rule. Kierkegaard called it the crowd, the invisible force that pulls us toward conformity. He said, "The crowd is untruth," and I felt that truth in every room I entered. Society has a hidden rule. Don't think too deeply, don't question too much, don't disrupt the comfort of the group. Most people follow it not because they're shallow, but because it's easier. It's safer to chase likes, repeat opinions, and avoid the abyss of life's deeper questions. But when you see through that, when you notice the lies people tell themselves, the routines they follow to escape meaning, you become a threat. I learned this the hard way. In my first job, I'd point out flaws in systems that everyone else accepted. "Why do we do it this way?" I'd ask. Instead of answers, I got sidelined. "Stop overcomplicating things," my boss would say. In friendships, I'd try to talk about ideas, meaning, purpose, the human condition, but the conversation would shift to small talk. I'd leave feeling emptier than if I'd been alone. Society says it loves original thinkers, but in reality, it rewards those who play along. Deep thoughts make people nervous. They expose illusions, challenge egos, and remind others of what they'd rather ignore. Kierkegaard's truth. Søren Kierkegaard understood this. Born in 1813, he was a loner in a bustling world. His melancholy and relentless curiosity set him apart, even from those closest to him. He wrote about the anguish of existence, the pain of being true to yourself in a world that demands you conform. To Kierkegaard, most people live inauthentically, chasing distractions to avoid facing themselves. But the individual who dares to think, to question, to seek truth, they walk a narrower path. He called it becoming a single individual, and it's not glamorous. It's raw, heavy, and often lonely. Kierkegaard believed that true freedom comes from embracing your own truth, even if it isolates you. When you see through the crowd's illusions, it's obsession with status, it's fear of silence, it's avoidance of life's weight. You can't go back. You become a wanderer, drifting through a world that feels like a stage play. But he didn't see this as despair. He saw it as courage. To venture into the deep, he wrote, is to find yourself where others dare not go. That's where I found myself, in the deep, where the noise fades and the truth begins to speak. The science behind the solitude. Science backs this up. A 2017 study in personality and individual differences found that highly intelligent people often feel less satisfied with frequent socializing. Their minds crave depth ideas, complexity, meaning not the surface-level chatter that fills most conversations. I've felt this. I'd sit at a party, surrounded by laughter, but feel like a ghost. The words were loud, but they said nothing. I wanted someone to see the world I saw, to hear the questions I carried, but that connection was rare. Psychologist Elaine Aron's work on highly sensitive people hit home for me. She says some of us process everything more intensely: emotions, ideas, even the way someone's voice trembles. I'd notice a friend's forced smile and spend hours wondering what they were hiding. I'd feel the weight of a casual lie, the sting of a world that seemed to move too fast for truth. This sensitivity isn't a gift, it's a burden that makes you feel too much, think too much, care too much. A 2020 study from University College London found that highly intelligent teens often face existential distress early on, asking questions about life and death that their peers don't touch. I was that teen, lying awake wondering why we're here, while my friends slept soundly. The envy that pushes you away. It's not just misunderstanding that isolates you, it's envy. When you speak with clarity or question what's accepted, you don't just challenge ideas, you challenge identities. I've seen it in the way people bristle when I point out a flaw in their logic, not because I'm right, but because it makes them feel small. The Dunning-Kruger effect explains this. Those who know less overestimate their competence, and your insight exposes their blind spots. Instead of growing, they push you away. I've been called intense, weird, even arrogant for asking questions no one else dared to voice. History is full of this. The poet Sappho was exiled for her bold words. Alan Turing, whose genius helped win a war, was shunned for his differences. Today, it's subtle coworkers ignoring your ideas, friends ghosting you for being too deep. Your clarity becomes a mirror, and not everyone wants to face it. Finding freedom in solitude. So, what do you do when your mind sets you apart? Kierkegaard's answer saved me. Lean into solitude. Not as escape, but as home. In the quiet, I found freedom to think without judgment, to feel without apology. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's the space where you stop pretending and start being. It's where I wrote my first poems, where I wrestled with life's questions, where I began to understand myself. Kierkegaard said, "The greatest hazard of all is to lose oneself in the crowd." Solitude saved me from that loss. Here's how I've learned to carry this weight. Embrace your difference. Your questions aren't flaws, they're lanterns lighting your path. Seek rare connections. Find the few who see the world like you, even if they're in books or across the globe. Create from your depth. Write, paint, think, let your mind shape something true. Trust the quiet. Solitude isn't empty, it's where you meet your truest self. You are not alone. If you've ever felt like your thoughts are too heavy, your heart too raw, or your questions too big for this world, hear this. You're not broken. You're awake. Kierkegaard knew that the loneliest paths lead to the clearest truths. Your solitude isn't a cage, it's a window to a life most never touch. Let the crowd pass you by. Let their noise fade. Your mind is a compass pointing to something real. This is Mindblow Sight, a space for those who think too much, feel too deeply, and refuse to settle for less than truth. If this story resonates, subscribe for more journeys into philosophy, psychology, and the human soul. Share this with someone who feels like an outsider they might need it. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever felt this loneliness? What's your story? I read every one. Let's build a home for minds that don't just belong, they shine.